Hi guys, and welcome to the official TrekCulture Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Seán Ferrick, and joining me is the effervescent Paul Sutherlin. Say hi, Paul.
Hey everyone.
Each week, Paul and I are going to be tackling the big questions that are raised in the Star Trek universe. And this week, for our inaugural episode, we will be trying to answer the big question, has Michael Burnham finally settled down? So, that's going to be our big one this week. But before we crack straight into that, really quickly, Paul, let the lovely people who are hopefully watching this or listening to this right now know who you are.
I am Paul Sutherlin. I am largely responsible for TrekCulture's 10 Secrets of Ex-Starships, which are performed on YouTube by Adam Cleary, with a lot more personality than I put into the articles. I also happen to play shipyard bar patron uncredited in Star Trek 2009.
That is literally 100% more Star Trek film than I have ever been in, or probably will ever be in. So that's pretty impressive.
Believe me, I bring it up in conversation whenever I can, so...
Well, I mean, like, it's only been, what, four times this evening since we started? I mean, I would do the same as well. But, no, that's really, really cool. Hopefully you might know who I am, which sounds really big-headed, but if you've been following the channel, I present the ups and downs every week for Discovery, and I did for Lower Decks as well. So that's where we've come together to do this, because there's a lot of stuff is coming up with Discovery. There's a lot of questions this season. There's a lot of lore being thrown at us this season. So straight away, Paul, I'm going to put you to work. Would you mind really quickly, what's going on in the world of Discovery up to this point? Because this is our first episode, but this is Discovery's third season, 7th episode.
Man, I should have prepared for this. Michael and the crew of the USS Discovery have taken the sphere data from the 23rd century into the 32nd century, which is a bit of a post-apocalyptic setting this time around. The burn has disabled most warp-capable starships, reduced the Federation to a skeleton of its former self, and Michael and newly minted Captain Saru have made it their mission to reunite the Federation and discover what exactly is the burn, what caused the state of the universe to be so lousy in the 32nd century.
That's pretty bloody good sum up, because that's the season in a nutshell. But overall, I'm really enjoying this year. I have to say that. I think it was the show for me had a rocky first year. What Star Trek season, with the exception of Lower Decks, didn't have a rocky first year, and I thought it improved at season 2, and I think it's after improving again in season 3. Just really, how do you feel about Discovery kind of overall?
Yeah, I kind of look at Discovery as kind of like the chameleon Star Trek show. Brian Fuller allegedly pitched it as a Star Trek anthology series, which would have a different setting and a new crew and a new ship every season. And I'm kind of feeling like, even though there's not a new ship or crew every season, the show is taking that anthology series sort of approach and reinventing itself every year. And I'm very fond of the reinvention that's going on in season 3. Taking it so far in the future obviously gives them a blank slate, which I really appreciate. And I think the franchise at large, the current Star Trek universe, it's got so much opportunity to tell great new stories with, Picard now in the 25th century. I mean, they must maybe cross that threshold into the 24th. Discovering the 32nd century, there's like a whole blank canvas there. And then Lower Decks, the animated format really gives them the opportunity to do a lot of new stuff. So I think, just in general, the Star Trek universe on CBS is in a great position. Now, do I totally agree with every single story beat that's occurred in the last couple seasons? No, not at all. But I love the 32nd century setting of Star Trek Discovery Season 3. I'm loving getting to know the universe all over again. To be honest, I couldn't agree more. I really like how they're both building on and bringing back
a lot of the lore as well. Now, Lower Decks was the biggest example of that. Lower Decks was, I mean, some of the Easter eggs that you were catching in those episodes was just like, oh wow, this is deep dive stuff, and it was really, really cool. This episode of Discovery, so this is probably the biggest and most obvious connection to Trek history that they've nearly done so far. And what I mean by that is, we had Spock and Pike as characters last season. Like, they were main players. But this week we have Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, I'd say this is the biggest throwback episode since, if memory serves, from last season, which used, the footage from the cage to seg into continuing that story. The reuse of footage of Spock from Unification parts. I think it's just part 2. I thought that was great. I thought that was a really clever way to bring Spock back into the picture and give Michael a little closure and a little. I mean, she has no idea what he's been up to. So, yeah.
That's true. I've probably much like yourself. I've rewatched this episode a couple of times now to see if there was anything I missed on first watch. And to be honest, there is things I missed on the first watch, which I've enjoyed spotting. There's one or two little kind of nitpicky things which I'm going to enjoy because they made me smile. I'm not here to eviscerate the episode. Give me time.
Are you talking about the fact that Spock's clothes change mid-sentence in the archival footage?
Or the fact of who was recording the archival footage, or the fact that original Discovery jumps to Ni'Var. Well, arrives at Ni'Var, I should say.
Wait, does it?
Yeah. Now, again, in the Ups and Downs a couple of weeks ago, I sort of got up on my soapbox and I started talking about 23rd century ships and blah, 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 blah. And then I kind of rapidly thought, well, hang on now. All of the post-production for this season was done in a cupboard. So, kind of chill out and relax. And with that in mind, as Discovery leaves Starfleet HQ, and you get to see the cool, straight away they answer the question. The nacelles retract back into the wings, and then they jump. Because what happens if the middle bit spins, but they leave the nacelles behind. So that's answered. But yes, it's original golden and more specifically intact wing Discovery arrives at Ni'Var. And I smiled. But again, like, I'm no graphic artist. I am not making any kind of complaints here. I thought it was fun.
Gosh, I'm usually the first person to notice that kind of stuff. I must have been really involved in the episode. I did notice that a lot of the background graphics on the sets still use the original configuration Discovery, but, you can kind of explain that away in universe.
No, I totally agree. Yes, they do. But, so, alright, so the episode, so the main crux of the episode is they go back to, so first of all, let's talk about Ni'Var. So, Vulcan's gone, but it isn't.
Well, it's not gone. It's still Vulcan, and I think that there was a little bit of confusion. I read a couple of reviews from non-Star Trek, geared websites that were confused about Vulcan being around after the Kelvin Timeline movies, but that fully misunderstands the fact that Discovery is set in the Prime universe. I don't know why you wouldn't know that this far in, but yeah, it is Vulcan. It appears to have been terraformed or spruced up for the Romulans. It looked a lot greener than it has in the past. I think that my major disappointment with the episode, I'm just going right there.
Get it out of the way first. It's cool.
I will not begrudge them a bottle episode. Bottle episodes are like a tradition in the franchise, but it's a huge missed opportunity to go to Vulcan and not beam down to the surface and give us a little look at what's going on.
I totally, I would love that as well, because we got even a few seconds, but we got a few seconds on Earth. I would very much like to see, but maybe we'll come back. If Ni'Var is as important as they're setting it up to be, and the context of that is this SB-19 study, which was a study that was operating at the time of the burn, which the people, I can't even say the Vulcans, the people of Ni'Var have withheld because of deep-seated mistrust between Ni'Var and the Federation. If that is as important as it seems it's going to be, I have a feeling we will be back to Ni'Var before season's end, and hopefully we'll get down onto the surface.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm not alone in loving the Vulcans and the Romulans and all of that political intrigue that made Star Trek Picard so appealing to me. And while I don't want to see Discovery step on Star Trek Picard's toes, I would love a little bit more time on Navarre and getting a little taste of what that's like on the surface and what their culture is like.
I agree. I would love to. Actually, I totally agree, because I'm really curious to see what does a joint Romulan-Vulcan heritage look like now, because they have clearly integrated, and they are operating now. There's mistrust, but what does do they have mixed schools? Is there some sort of segregation going on the planet?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's obviously mistrust, but I think they specifically said in the text of the episode that there are Romulan and Vulcan districts, which indicates that they are somewhat segregated, which is a little bit disappointing, but it's at least rife for interesting storytelling.
No, I totally agree. I think the quorum panel. So Burnham invokes the ritual of Tiklan Iket.
Yeah, I didn't write that one down. So.
She invokes the ritual. That means she effectively forces the sort of Navarre Science Academy she needs to present, much like you would present your thesis in front of a PhD selection panel. She has to stand and basically prove why they should give her this data. I suppose important information. They are no longer members of the Federation. That was probably one of the biggest reveals of certainly the first half of the episode, was that Vulcan, one of the core members of the Federation, is no longer a member. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I think that I hope that the show addresses it, because I think there's like a larger issue with the Federation, not just that it's been separated from most of the rest of the galaxy, or not just because they don't have the ability to explore space anymore. There's something philosophically different about the Federation in 32nd century. It almost seems like Earth and Vulcan. I mean, Earth. The captain of the Earth Defense Force, she says, why would we be part of the Federation? We can take care of ourselves. There's like a philosophical change in the way people are looking at the Federation. It's like it's no longer important. Vulcan to Navarre, they just didn't seem like they needed the Federation anymore. I want to know more about that.
I think so. And actually, just picking up on something really quickly that you're saying there, in the initial scene where Burnham and Saru bring Burnham's theory to Admiral Vance, this is before they leave now, and he gets really, for Vance, he gets really quite excited with the idea of being able to approach Navarre, and Burnham is Spock's sister. Great, basically, she's like a skeleton key. She's going to get them through the door. And I wonder, is there... maybe is there some sort of greed there in terms of, let's say Vance wants to rebuild the Federation and the crew of the Discovery want to rebuild the Federation, but are they both coming at it in two completely different directions? Is Vance going, they have resources that we need and we don't have the resources to invade, but we might be able to diplomatically get, and then Saru and the crew of Discovery are just like, well, we're all great friends.
Well, I don't know how you feel about this, but as I kind of alluded to, I really do think that there's a shoe to drop with the Federation this season. It might be a major twist about the nature of the Federation, which is something that I would be interested in seeing, or there might just be, like you said, like it might be like a motive, or they might be up to something not necessarily nefarious, but not something that they're open about right now. Their complete ignorance of the burn, like deliberate ignorance of the burn, to me, I found that suspect. That might just be like a contrivance to motivate our characters to learn about it. But in my mind, it read like there was more to come from the Federation, that we don't quite know everything we should know about them. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would like to see that.
I think so as well. I think that's definitely... So that's something we will revisit on this pod, I think, a fair bit, because I think every week we're going to get more breadcrumbs, if you like, and I definitely have theories.
Yes.
So that's our promise to you here. We will revisit. But just for this episode, one thing I really liked about the Quorum, I will come to in a second, because there's one more person who arrives on Discovery who we sort of need to address.
That would be Dr. Gabriel Burnham.
What?
The original Red Angel.
The original. Nice, I like that. Within this season, we already have an original season. No, I like it.
The OG Angel.
What did you think of her reveal? So, I suppose, both so early in the season, even though we're halfway through, but also there's so little fanfare. What did you think?
I don't want to be that guy who just like constantly negs the show, because I did like this episode. But I thought that my read on it was that the Qowat Milat advocate was baked into the story, and at some point the writers were like, well, we need a little bit more connection to Michael, so wait, what if the Qowat Milat advocate is her mom? And like that was what my read on that was. It felt shoehorned, and it also felt like they were kind of just getting it over with. That they'd set up this minor mystery about what's going on with Dr. Burnham, but weren't really that interested in pursuing that storyline. So they threw her in and got rid of her. And to me, that's a little disappointing, because I think of all the Michael stories that the show has generated, finding her long-lost mother is more interesting to me than finding out what the Burn's about. Like, the Burn could be a throwaway color, a detail about the universe that I would be interested in learning about, but I would be more intrigued if the point of the season was to get Michael to reunite with her mother, and then the Federation to reunite with its former member worlds. Like, that's more interesting to me than the big mystery again. Last season the big mystery was what and who is the Red Angel and what are they doing. And this season, it's what's the Burn, and to me, like, that's just like, if everything in the universe is going to tie into Michael Burnham as the protagonist of Star Trek Discovery, why not just make the season about her personal journey to reunite with her mother?
Yeah, I think so. You've raised a few really good points there, right?
Yeah, sorry, that was a rant.
No, it's great. I'll try and go through them, I think, one by one, because I know we're pretty much on the same page when it comes to the Burn, and I've interacted a little bit with people online about this. About people have very varying opinions on the Burn. Some love that it's the big season, mystery, and that's cool. Some are. I'm not in that camp. I'm a little bit like yourself. I think it in itself, to me, is not a strong enough mystery for it to be, say, potentially episode 13 reveal, even if we find out a bit sooner. I do like to concede that there has been an incident. I like that, but I'm more concerned in seeing the fallout of that incident, which we are getting a little bit in how the Federation has been splintered, how Earth and Vulcan, and presumably Andor, have left the Federation. Now, I know not every Andorian has joined this, the
Emerald Chain.
Emerald Chain, on the other hand, is this new Orion Syndicate, which is sort of an Orion Andorian syndicate, but I don't know if it's been out and out said that Andor, as a planet, has joined this, which means, what are the rest of the Andorians up to? Now, we know that Rin, who we met last week in Scavengers, is an Andorian man who is presumably going to join a motley crew that we will discuss when we start to discuss next week's episode. But that's interesting. So these are core members of the Federation. They've all left the Federation. There's obviously no ban, because presumably Vance is human. So there's no ban on these worlds becoming or joining Starfleet, for example. Now, I realise I might be incredibly racist there by saying somebody who looks human is automatically human. I don't know. But for this episode, one thing I loved, right? I really, really loved, is that the Quorum is led by a Vulcan and a moderate Romulan and what seems to be a hardline Romulan. And I thought that actually was a really good mix.
Sorry, wasn't the moderate Romulan a mixed heritage Remuno Vulcan?
Oh, do you know what? You're right. And do you know what? I picked that up as that it was just a community, but I think you're dead right. Sorry, I think you're absolutely right. That is kind of half. Oh, I like that, and that also.
So they were like embodying their different positions. She's literally split down the center.
Yeah, I like that. Although now that I think about that, do I like that? Does it mean that Vulcan blood makes you calm and Romulan blood makes you excited?
I mean, that's just going back to the monolithic cultures that Star Trek is famous for, so yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, that's true. Throw a bit of Klingon blood there as well, and you've got a wild weekend. But in terms of, I mean, the quorum itself is interesting, and the arguments are more about, I mean, the episode is should Michael Burnham stay in Starfleet or not? With the asterisks and are we getting SB19's data? Spoiler, we do.
Yeah, and I think that that was essentially a question that was raised at the end of Scavengers, hinted at after she reunited with the crew, and it was revealed that she'd spent a year apart from them and kind of learned to live outside of the Federation structure. But yes, I guess Unification III addresses and potentially puts to bed the question about whether Michael is going to stay on Discovery or not. She stays on Discovery as the ship's science officer, which is 2 steps forward and 2 steps back as far as her position for her position on the ship in the past year. What do you think about her ultimate decision?
I was frustrated on first watch because of the amount of change that we've seen in this one character in one season. I am not in any way opposed to change. I just think it's been a bit I'm getting whiplash over she's staying, she's going. I like if this is it now, if she is going to stay on the ship, which she seems to be saying she will, and she's going to act as science officer, and we can sort of, not that I want to see less of Sonequa Martin Green, but if we can make her part of the crew as opposed to the Burnham and Discovery show, I would be delighted with that, because I like the interaction. It inevitably feels a little bit rushed, but I think it's they couldn't really have done it another way in one episode. A couple of really quick questions before we leave the episode overall. My first question is, in terms of feeling rushed, what did you think of the pacing of the episode?
I didn't have an issue with the pacing. It honestly really felt like a classic, trial bottle episode to me, and I liked that. Did you have a specific point about the pacing?
No. Well, one thing that I liked about it is that it took a few moments to slow down, and in particular, so I'll give you my answer first to the question I'm about to ask you, which is I loved the interplay and I loved the diplomacy that Saru developed or displayed between himself and President Tarina. My question being, what did you think of Captain Saru in this episode?
Oh, yeah, the pacing as far as how the story unfolded, I loved it. It actually gave us time to have conversations. There wasn't a lot of running around, jumping from location to location and plot thread to plot thread. It was a very focused story, and I really appreciated that. And I thought that Saru's diplomacy was, the whole episode was really a successful throwback to, the more talky, diplomatic episodes of the past. So yeah, I thought that Saru acquitted himself well as the ship's captain, better than he had in previous episodes this season, I thought, and I kind of got a little bit of like a flirtation. Did I got that a little bit. I got that a little bit. I kind of wanted them to kiss at the end for some reason.
Well, I'm okay with that. Maybe there's a bit of pond fire going on. Maybe there isn't. Who knows? Really quick question. Would you accept Tilly as your first officer?
Oh. Tilly is such a great character as like the I saw her as sort of like the beacon of hope in the more dour first and second seasons. Like she seemed to be like emblematic of the more optimistic, less burdened characters that we saw in the original series in the Next Generation. Like, Tilly seemed to me like she was sort of foreshadowing that kind of attitude in Discovery, whereas everyone else was dealing with their own issues and dealing with the, Klingon War. And so taking Tilly out of that context is a little bit... I think that there are other characters that could have taken on the first officer role, like Non. Instead of dumping Non on Seed Ship, I think she would have been a great first officer. It almost feels like maybe that's why they did dump her on the Seed Ship, is so that they could give Tilly this promotion. It doesn't really feel very natural to me, and I like Tilly as the upbeat character you go to when you need that kind of scene versus a actual leader on the ship. Like, I just don't know if I want her in that role, but I'm open-minded about it. I didn't really answer your question about me personally taking orders from Tilly, but that's my thought about Tilly.
That is cool. That is a very well-reasoned and, I believe, safe answer to that question, so kudos to that one. Deltas out of 5, how many would you give it?
4.5.
Oh, very good. 4.5. I like it. I will give it a 4. Tiny little bit of, there was a bit of relegation of the B plot, which I was like, oh, okay. Do we feel Michael has calmed down and settled down? I'm pretty sure you have excellently answered that. I hope so. And if it goes different, I'm sure we will address this with potentially rubbing of noses and sighs next week. And now, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the news, which is really just a nice way of saying, let's talk about next week's episode.
For over 2 centuries, you're listening to the Federation News Network.
What's the episode called, Seán?
So the episode next week is called Sanctuary. And I say next week. We are recording this the same week that the episode is due to be released. So this week's episode is called Sanctuary. And so we've got the little teaser synopsis, we've got the trailer, and we've got a scene that's been released, and we've got pictures. Frankly, we've been spoiled.
Have we? Because the pictures are generally just people staring at consoles, so...
Oh, this is actually the console episode. It's just admiring the design of the way the ship's been done. No, I think, so, breaking it up bit by bit, we'll start with the trailer. So we both watched the trailer in preparation for this. So, yes. Initial reactions to the trailer, what do you think?
I'm very happy to finally learn more about Book. I haven't felt very satisfied with his interactions so far this season, his role in the show. But he's got a lot of promise, like everything this season. So, like, I'm eager to learn more about what his deal is. And I'm excited to finally get a little bit more info about what's going on with Georgiou after we were teased last week that we would figure out maybe a little something about what's going on with her. They clearly cut the scene between Georgiou and Culber and saved it for this week, or there was some kind of marketing snafu where images from that scene were released as part of Unification 3, but weren't actually going to be in that episode. I don't know.
But you're dead right, because I remember we were looking at it last week, and one of the first things I was like, oh, great, they've given Culber an office. He's graduated now to be the proper chief medical officer. Up to this point, he was just the intern. Of course, joking. But it's just cool to see him with an office. And yet, they've actually released... I don't know, obviously I don't know yet if it's the whole scene, but they've released a roughly 2-minute scene in that office, potentially as an apology for releasing the images early, of himself and Georgiou talking. And Culber, once again, is showing that he takes absolutely no crap from anyone this season.
Yeah, it was a nice little scene of them sparring. He's also... He's like the badass doctor, He will, like, go to the mat with anybody, but also is, like, the shoulder to cry on, which actually seems like, judging by his presence on Twitter and social media that seems like an awful lot like Wilson Cruz, personally.
Yeah, no, I agree. It seems to be. I've done my fair amount of social media research and study. There's definitely a blurring of the lines, I think, between the character of Culber and the person of Will Screws, and I'm okay with that. Like, that's cool, because it's refreshing to see somebody bring so much of themselves into a role. Obviously, I don't know the man personally, but from what it seems to be is that he's bringing a lot of himself into the role.
Yeah, and it's also nice to see Culber evolve from Stamets' partner to his own fully fleshed out character in relatively short time. He was absent for so much of season 1 and 2 because he was dead. And then in the few episodes we've gotten with him, the character has become very distinct and likable. I like the guy.
Yeah. Oh, same. He's easily, as it stands, one of my favorite. I will say as well, and this is not a criticism of Culber's character, he is one of the most fleshed out characters.
Yeah. And I think that, like, one of the things that I thought was interesting about the preview for this upcoming episode is Rin, the Andorian without antennae, is he's back. So whether or not he remains on the ship, it's good to, like, have a character, recur. I think that one of the things that I'm going to nitpick Discovery about even more is the fact that we get introduced to these great characters, Reno, and then they fall off the face of the ship for 2 or 3 episodes. I'm not getting that sort of Deep Space Nine consistency where you can just run into anybody in the corridor. Like, the episode really needs to, like, have, like, a specific Reno scene generally for her to even be around. So, like, I guess that's a long way of saying I like that the Discovery crew is expanding. I hope that Rin stays on board, and I also hope that, like, these characters continue to be featured in a way that, like, allows us to get to know them.
I think so. What I think as well is that Rin has already been shot, so. A bit like A Christmas Carol, the Marleys were dead to begin with. Hopefully they've got that out of the way for him, because there does seem to be a bit of explosions and ship-to-ship missiles, and, some people seem pretty unhappy in the coming trailer, but it looks like it's going to be an action-heavy episode.
Oh yeah, he's totally a goner, isn't he?
No, I hope it's in the way. I hope they've gotten it out of the way. I was like, no, we've done the shooting of him, so let's shoot somebody else.
Or the guy's just got a target on his back, but...
Absolutely. When he is bright blue, he's easy to... I mean, they seem to be standing in a kind of an autumnal forest. You're going to spot him. And
he's lacking some sensory organs, so, he's really at a disadvantage here.
Oh, he really is bone, isn't he? So, good luck, Rin. It looks like as well, so I'm pretty sure it's confirmed. So, in the synopsis, it's Book's home planet that they're going to. And it's under the thumb of the mentioned but not yet seen Osira.
Right, head of the Emerald Chain, who, yes. Judging by the trailer, this is an Orion woman. Do you want the Emerald Chain to be the big bads of this season? Do you want to see, like, a big blowout battle with the Emerald Chain at the end of the season, along with uncovering the mystery of the burn? Or do you hope, as I do, that there's a even bigger bad, or at least something more interesting than just a gang of Orions and Andorians stirring up mischief?
I definitely don't think they're going to be the big bad. I think we'll have something, not Starfleet per se, but something like that there will be something bigger at work. One thing I thought was cool as well, because if you think of everything that we've seen of the Orion people and Orion culture up to this point, it's kind of cool to see an Orion woman leading the Empire. Now, I don't know if they're good. I don't know if we like any of this, but all of the Orion women that we've seen before this have been slave girls, have been...
You're forgetting the classic standout Season 4 Enterprise episode called Bound,
God,
in which it was revealed that the Orion slave women were in fact not the slaves, they were the slavers. They were the masters. You forget this episode.
You're right, I did. I remember bits. I remember one of them is played by one of the versions of Tora Zial.
Zial, yeah.
No, I'll give you that one. I had forgotten that because, yeah. All right, well, I take all of that back. It's still nice to see an Orion woman leading the pack. That's good. And I was laughing because in the trailer I was like, oh, pointed fingers, it must be a Klingon. And you were like, no, it's very clearly an Orion woman. John.
Well, no, I also think that it could be a Klingon. I've noticed that a lot of aliens on Discovery have pointed fingers. So
I really do. I wonder, is it something that the costume department was like, okay, we start with pointed fingers and then we work up the hands from there. And if it is, hey, look, it's working for you.
Neville Page and Glenn Hetrick, they have sort of a couple of repeating motifs, and one of those is long fingernails and bright blue eyes.
Was it just me, or did Saru's eyes seem particularly bright this week?
I think that there's something going on with the color grading this season. Discovery's interiors are very blue. I was noticing in the corridor scenes that either they're lighting the sets with blue lighting or they're tinting it after the fact.
And we will keep an eye out for that in the upcoming episode. But based on what we've seen so far, Sanctuary, looking forward to it?
Yes, although I know that, it's going to have, it's got a long journey to get to the height of Unification 3. Though, it's also got a long way to go down to reach the, not so great levels of Scavengers.
This is potentially an unfair question, but out of Discovery overall so far, where does Unification 3 stand for you?
I guess it is an unfair question.
And you have 5 seconds to answer it.
I thought that it ranked pretty high for me. It did this what I've been wanting out of the show for a while, which is to play with legacy storytelling. I thought that did that really successfully, balanced the TNG arc with the current Discovery arc with Michael's overall arc. I thought that was a perfect balance. So I think that the episode ranks very high as a prototypical. This is what Discovery should be for me.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. I think it was really, really good, solid. Cool.
For over 2 centuries, the Federation News Network.
Well, that brings us up to more or less the end of analysing the episode and looking forward to next week. So we'll obviously pick it up again on the next episode of the pod. For now, Paul,
yes, sir.
I'm going to put you right in front of the quorum as I task you to either defend your decision to get rid of something permanently, as I ask you to condemn something to Cargo Bay 101. Okay, really, really quickly, the rules of Cargo Bay 101 is what goes into Cargo Bay 101 gets blasted off out into space, never to come back. It can be anything at all from the entire Star Trek franchise. What would you put in Cargo Bay 101 that you would then slam your hand down on the console and blast it out into space?
Well, given the entire Star Trek franchise, there's a lot to choose from. But I'll stick with Discovery, and I'll stick with something relevant to Season 3. I think Gersha Phillips, the costume designer, is an excellent costume designer. She makes a mean jacket. I really am fond of the new uniforms and costumes that she's developed for Season 3. However, I've never really loved the standard issue Discovery uniforms, the blue and blinged out costumes with the asymmetrical collar and zipper. And I think it's time to put those in the airlock and blow them out into space and give Discovery their own, maybe not like the 32nd century standard issue uniforms, but some kind of Discovery-specific hybrid jumpsuits that are, flashy and consistent with the 32nd century aesthetic. And if we're going to name Discovery A to hide the fact that she's a from the distant past, why are they still wearing their 23rd century uniforms? That doesn't make any sense to me. So get those 23rd century costumes, put them in the airlock, and blow them out into space.
You make a strong argument. I won't lie to you. You make a strong argument. I think aesthetically, I do like them, and it took me a while. It did take me a while. I think initially I didn't warm to them very quickly in the first season, but they've grown on me now. Could we keep the collars?
No, those are the worst part. Get rid of them.
Oh, is it just the angles that bother you?
Yes, and, they actually look great on the female characters, on the actresses, but I don't think that they look very good on the men on the ship. I'm sorry.
No, that's cool, but you're going to have to elaborate on that point.
These uniforms look really good on women, and I just think that they look a little bit ill-fitting on the men.
Short and sweet. No, I think are there any of them you would save? Culber's one.
I like the less flashy, the away team uniforms with a normal collar. In fact, if you want to get really, really granular here, my favorite uniforms from Discovery are the Science Division uniforms from The Trouble with Edward, because they got rid of the asymmetrical stuff, and they were a little bit more, they were a little bit more traditionally what you'd expect from Star Trek, the colored top and the black pants, but it had that, just straightforward collar, straightforward zipper, without all the bling. I like those uniforms quite a bit.
Okay, so...
Yep.
Where does that leave us? Am I with you on the asymmetrical thing? Because you're right. The trouble with Edward's one. The trouble with Edwards? The trouble with... Oh no, that's right. Sorry, the trouble with Edward.
Yes.
Oh my god, it's baked into me to go the trouble with tribbles. The trouble with Edward costumes, I really like them as well. I have to say, they were really, really nice and stand out. I love seeing the different colour. Oh, go on then, I'll give it to you. But that means I'm going to take something you like next week. So live in fear. Live in fear. But with that, I won't belabour a point. You win this week. So I'm going to depressurise this bay, and that'll bring us up to date for the moment. So before I depressurise anything, Paul, really quickly, thank you so much for your time. If anybody wants to reach out and get in touch, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter expressing my hot takes at Paul Sutherlin.
Excellent. Thank you very much. To everyone listening or watching, please drop a like. Please subscribe to the channel. Please drop a comment if you can. You can find us over on Twitter at TrekCulture, all one word. You can find me at Seán Ferrick as well. In the meantime, guys, stay safe, live long and prosper, and grab onto something.